So the first question was about Daniel's prayer. What specific things does he emphasize? The first thing is this, that God changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. Why might that be relevant to Daniel? Because Daniel has been living through excruciatingly difficult times. He himself has to ponder and weigh, why am I living in this particular period of history, which is so much more difficult than other periods of history? Why has God put me here? And why is God doing this? But the fact that God is doing it, that God is in control of it, is a takeaway, as we'll see in the dream itself, of course, since it's about the rise and fall of kings and kingdoms, that God is ultimately orchestrating historical events. So notice that having gone through these experiences, when Daniel later sat down to compose the events, note how it influenced his narrating. He says, "The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar," at the beginning of the book in chapter 1. That Daniel is looking back, reflecting on these stories and seeing that it's the Lord who's raising up kings and putting down kings. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is most of the prayer, is about revelation. That for Daniel and for the Bible in general, this is a unique feature of our religion, that God supernaturally discloses the truth. Apart from that disclosure, apart from God's revelation of the truth to us as individuals, as it was to Daniel, as well as to communities of people, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't have the light. It's God who reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells in him. He's made known this matter to Daniel, and through Daniel to Babylon. So God is the source of light in the sense of the fountain of truth. And the effect of this truth, what is its effect? What does the revelation of the truth actually accomplish? Well, now we go to what happens when Daniel meets with Nebuchadnezzar. He first says to them, here, of course, it's to Arioch, who was in charge of them and was going to hand them over for execution. He says, "Do not destroy the Magi, the wise men of Babylon." They do not need to be destroyed. The dream has been revealed. And with this revelation of the dream, Daniel didn't just save his own life and the life of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He saved the lives. And when I say he, I mean God, of course. God, through Daniel, was saving all the Magi from death. So what is the effect of this revelation? The effect is salvation. God reveals the truth in order to save. Okay? And in this case, he saved Gentiles, pagan Gentiles, who participated in by virtue of their being within the government. Many of them participated in the destruction, in the sack of Jerusalem, or rather the sack of Jerusalem when they took Daniel. The destruction comes a little later, actually, of Jerusalem. So the next thing Daniel says, because the king, when he asks him, when the king asks him, "Are you able to make known to me the dream?" Daniel says, "No wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked," right? No human could reveal the truth of what dream you had the previous night. But there is a God. And of course, since the gods of these other Magi, right? The Magi were, many of them were Chaldean, but some were incorporated, like Daniel and his friends, from other kingdoms who had other gods as well. So none of the gods, not the Babylonian gods, not any of the foreign gods, could reveal the truth of this dream. But there was one God, the God of the Jews, Yahweh. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. and he has made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. He says, as for me, this is Daniel speaking here, as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living. It wasn't human ingenuity, human brightness. There was nothing within Daniel that could have produced the knowledge of this dream, the truth of this dream, or its interpretation. Rather, it took a gift from God. Even Nebuchadnezzar's threat to kill all the Magi is not arm-twisting God to do anything. God is God. So no human being can leverage any of their power against the God of heaven. So Nebuchadnezzar knew he had no one had access to this dream except him, but he had no access to the interpretation because the dream was just vague enough. He didn't know exactly the interpretation, though he assumed it had something to do with his demise, and so he feared an assassination attempt. But the only way to know the truth and for his life to be spared and for anyone's lives to be spared was for God to speak. God had to choose to speak, and his choice is his own choice. He gave the truth. In other words, this revelation of the truth was a gift. Okay? The gift of truth. So truth itself was a gift that led to salvation in our story. All right? Very important principles here in how Daniel responds to God in his prayer and what he explains to Nebuchadnezzar, so Nebuchadnezzar understands what sort of the terms, if you're going to trust this God in heaven, what are the terms? Well, you have to understand that his truth that he delivers to you, that he gives over to you, is a gift. And it's a gift according to his mercy that leads to salvation. So that leads us then with this question, what then is exactly the dream? What is it about? And particularly, how does it critique Babylon? What is it in the dream and its interpretation that offers to Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar, a critique? And what particular feature of this pagan Gentile culture is being critiqued? Chapter 1 was about education, about schooling, and the values within schooling, competing values, absolute values versus relative values, and so on. But what about this critique in chapter 2? What's the particular feature of the culture of Babylon or of Gentile pagan culture in general is being critiqued? So that's your question. There's a lot of details in here. So best wishes, and we'll see you next time.